Jack Monroe was just a night shift security guard trying to get by. One rainy night, he helped a shivering old man across a flooded crosswalk, offering nothing but a worn-out umbrella. 7 days later, a black Bentley pulled up, and the man he helped stepped out, holding $1 million opportunity. Hi there! Welcome to the Smart Intelligence channel. Before we dive into today's story, I'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Wishing you and your family good health and happiness. Now, let's get started. Jack Monroe didn't think twice about it. After all, what kind of person leaves an old man standing in the rain, struggling to cross a 4-lane road during a downpour? He'd been on his break, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup behind the front desk of the mid-rise building where he worked. When he noticed the man through the rain-smeared glass, something tugged at his gut. The old man was hunched, his long coat clinging to his frame, soaked through, a cane in one hand, and the other shielding his face from the wind. Jack grabbed the small umbrella from the lost and found bin and dashed out. The umbrella was barely big enough for one person, let alone two, but he stretched it over the man's head anyway. Without saying a word, he guided the man slowly across the street. Each step felt like it took a lifetime. When they reached the sidewalk, Jack noticed the old man's loafers were leaking water. The man looked up at him, his eyes tired but kind. "What's your name, son?" the man asked, breathless. "Jack," he replied, holding the umbrella over both of them. "Jack Monroe." The old man nodded. "Thank you, Jack." Not many would have stopped. He didn't ask for more, didn't offer a handshake or a tip. He simply smiled, then turned down the sidewalk and disappeared into the rain. That night, Jack returned to his post like it was just another shift. The rain continued pounding the city, and Jack never gave that moment another thought. Life, after all, doesn't stop to give you a pat on the back. You do what's right and move on. Jack lived paycheck to paycheck. Every week, he sent $200 home to help pay for his mother's medical bills. Her Parkinson's had worsened, and the medications weren't cheap. Some nights, he skipped dinner to stretch his budget. Still, he never let that change the way he treated people. He believed in kindness, the kind that doesn't make headlines or get shared on social media, the quiet kind. The following Friday, just past 7 p.m., Jack's shift had barely begun when the building's intercom buzzed. "There's a man asking to see you," the receptionist's voice crackled. Me, Jack asked, puzzled. "Yeah, says it's urgent." Curious and a bit uneasy, Jack stepped outside to the lobby. The glass revolving door was just finishing a turn, and through it stepped a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit. Behind him, a black Bentley idled, its engine humming like a soft purr in the rain. Jack recognized the face instantly, but it looked sharper, cleaner. The coat was different, the shoes new, the cane replaced by a polished walking stick with silver detailing. "Jack Monroe," the man said, walking with calm authority. "Do you have a moment?" Jack blinked. "Of course, sir. Are you?" The man chuckled. "Yes, I'm the guy you helped last week. And yes, I'm also Howard Sterling." Jack's jaw almost dropped. The name rang a bell. Sterling. Wasn't that the name plastered across half the high-rises downtown? The Sterling Group. Real estate, finance, tech. One of the biggest privately held empires in the state. Sir, I didn't realize." Sterling raised a hand. "That's exactly the point. You didn't realize who I was. You just helped." He motioned for Jack to sit beside him in the lounge area, the marble floor reflecting soft golden light from the chandeliers overhead. "You see, Jack," Sterling began, "I've spent the last 2 years trying to find someone with character, not credentials. I wanted to know if decency still existed in this city. So I dressed down, wandered into the world, and waited. Some looked away. Others turned their backs. But you stopped. You shared the only umbrella you had." Jack couldn't speak. He was still trying to understand what was happening. "I want to offer you something," Sterling continued. "A full scholarship to finish your degree, whatever you want to study. And after that, a role on my executive security team, starting salary, $75,000 a year, benefits, travel, and a signing bonus to help your mom." Jack blinked again, this time with tears forming in the corners of his eyes. "I don't know what to say," Sterling leaned forward, eyes steady. Just keep being the guy who stops in the rain. Jack didn't sleep that night. His mind raced with disbelief, joy, fear. It all blended together. The next morning, he called his mother and told her everything. She cried harder than he'd ever heard her cry. And just like that, with one umbrella, one choice, and one act of kindness, Jack's life began to change. Not because he chased it, but because he didn't. The following Monday felt no different than any other. The rain had stopped, but Jack's shoes were still damp from the night before. He showed up 15 minutes early for his shift, like always, in his neatly pressed navy blue uniform. The front desk smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, and the lobby lights buzzed softly overhead. By 8 p.m., the rhythm of the building had settled into its usual lull. Residents came and went. Delivery drivers dropped off late-night takeout, and Jack made his usual rounds, checking locks, responding to minor tenant complaints, and logging every detail into his worn black notebook. But as he stood outside watching the last of the evening traffic, a strange thought crept in. Why had that man remembered his name? He didn't dwell on it. It wasn't his business. Not everyone needed a reason to say thank you. What Jack didn't know was that his small act of kindness, shielding an old man with a shared umbrella, steadying his steps through ankle-deep water, had triggered something far bigger than he could ever imagine. Across the city, inside a high-rise office overlooking downtown, Howard Sterling sat reviewing a security camera still. It showed Jack, mid-step, one arm around the old man, the other holding a sad, flimsy umbrella tilted protectively over them both. Sterling zoomed in on Jack's face. It wasn't pity. It wasn't charity. It was pure instinct. The kind of goodness that doesn't ask for recognition. Sterling hadn't lied. For over 2 years, he'd quietly tested humanity, stepping into vulnerable roles to see who would stop for someone invisible. Sometimes he posed as a homeless man outside banks. Sometimes as a confused elderly passenger at bus terminals. Most people ignored him. A few spared $1. Fewer offered eye contact. But Jack acted as if it were the most natural thing in the world to stop. Back at the building, Jack was helping a resident with a grocery cart when a call came through the front desk. A package had arrived for him. He rarely got anything, not even junk mail. He signed for the envelope and turned it over in his hands. It was thick, sealed in cream-colored paper, his name written in precise looping letters. Jack Monroe. Inside was a note, handwritten. Kindness reveals itself when no one is watching. And when it does, the world notices. I'd like to invite you to meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m., Sterling Tower, 49th floor. Howard. Jack read it 3 times. He checked the address twice. There was no contact number, no assistant's name, just an invitation. And the signature of one of the wealthiest, most elusive men in the city. The next morning, Jack stood in front of Sterling Tower in his cleanest khakis and a button-up shirt that barely fit across his shoulders anymore. The lobby was marble from floor to ceiling, with a chandelier bigger than his entire studio apartment. A receptionist in a tailored suit greeted him by name and handed him a guest badge without asking for ID. He rode the elevator in silence, watching the floor numbers tick upward. At floor 49, the doors slid open to a private office bathed in morning light. A wall of windows revealed the skyline in crisp detail. Steel, glass, and sky stretching for miles. Howard Sterling stood by the window, sipping black coffee from a small porcelain cup. He turned and smiled. "You came," he said simply. Jack nodded. "Yes, sir. I wasn't sure if I should." "You should," Sterling replied, "because what you did wasn't small. Not to me." He gestured to a seat and sat opposite Jack, placing a leather folder on the table between them. "You gave me something that night, Jack. Not just help across the street. You reminded me that decency still exists, that not everyone sees the world as a transaction." Jack stayed quiet, unsure what to say. Sterling opened the folder. Inside was a full scholarship offer to any community college or university in the state, and a signed employment agreement for a new position being developed in his company's security division. Community Liaison Officer. The salary made Jack blink twice. $75,000 a year. Full medical, housing allowance, retirement benefits, Why me? Jack finally asked. Sterling leaned forward, voice soft. Because I need people who don't wear masks when no one's watching. You didn't know who I was. You just did the right thing. That's rare, Jack, and I invest in rare. Jack felt something shift inside him. Not pride, not disbelief, but possibility. For the first time in years, life wasn't something he had to survive. It was something he could begin to shape. That umbrella he used that night? He still had it. Torn fabric, broken ribs, barely held together with duct tape. And yet, it had carried more weight than he'd ever imagined. And now, it was carrying him into a new future. Jack never imagined that transitioning from guarding an aging apartment building to stepping inside the polished headquarters of the Sterling Group would feel so natural, yet so overwhelming. Every day now started with an elevator ride 50 stories up, into a world where decisions moved millions, and mistakes carried price tags far heavier than any umbrella could protect him from. His new title, Community Liaison Officer, sounded fancy, but Howard Sterling had made it clear. Your job is to stay grounded. Don't let the suit change the soul underneath. For the first few weeks, Jack threw himself into learning everything. How the internal systems worked, how private security teams coordinated with city officials, even how to write polished memos using words he'd only ever heard on news reports. His co-workers, all Ivy League graduates with firm handshakes and fast-talking confidence, gave him polite nods but rarely invited him to lunch. He didn't mind. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here because he had one chance to change his life, and he wasn't about to waste it. Then came the incident. It started with a phone call on a Thursday afternoon. A fire had broken out in one of Sterling's older residential buildings, an 11-story structure housing nearly 200 tenants, mostly low-income families. The fire was contained to the third floor, but the damage was enough to displace several dozen people. No deaths. But tension was rising fast. By Friday morning, the media had swarmed in. Headlines ranged from Sterling's empire crumbles to negligence in billion-dollar portfolio. Jack arrived at work early, coffee in hand, only to be greeted by a stern-faced receptionist. Mr. Sterling wants to see you. Now. Jack's heart kicked against his ribs. He'd only spoken to Howard twice since his hiring. Both times had been warm, encouraging. This didn't feel like that. Upstairs, the atmosphere was tense. Howard stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Jack, he said without turning, tell me what happened last night. Jack blinked. Sir, I only found out about the fire this morning. I haven't... Howard turned. Not the fire. The response. Our response. The way our team spoke to tenants. The fact that a mother of 3 had to sleep in her car in 38-degree weather because our hotline was down. Jack felt his stomach drop. I hired you to be the human in the machine, Howard said, softer now. I trusted you to keep us connected to the people who live in our buildings. Where were you? I didn't know, Jack said, voice tight. No one contacted me. That's the problem, Howard replied. They didn't think to. And that means they don't see your role as essential. We need to fix that, now. By noon, Jack was in the company SUV heading toward the damaged building. He carried nothing but a notepad, a cell phone, and a growing knot in his gut. The scene was heavier than he expected. The exterior of the building was blackened in places, the smell of smoke still clinging to the walls. Families stood in clusters, wrapped in blankets, holding cardboard cups of donated coffee. Kids clung to their mothers. Elderly tenants sat on folding chairs, their eyes hollow. Jack didn't approach with a badge or a speech. He just walked in and started listening. He wrote down every name, every complaint, every gap in the emergency protocol. He spent 6 hours on site, coordinating with local shelters, ordering portable heaters, even buying $300 worth of hot meals out of his own pocket. When he returned to headquarters, he dropped the receipts, reports, and footage on Howard's desk. I know I messed up, but I'm not walking away from this. Howard scanned the documents in silence, then looked up. You didn't mess up, Jack. You showed up, when it counted. A week later, Sterling Group announced the formation of a new department, Tenant Advocacy and Emergency Response, with Jack Monroe named as its founding director. His salary doubled. His story was shared quietly across internal memos as a reminder. Empathy wasn't optional. But Jack didn't care about the title. That weekend, he returned to the damaged building. Not in a suit, but in jeans and a hoodie, and helped repaint a tenant's living room. As he dipped his roller into a tray of sky blue paint, one of the kids came up and asked, "Are you the boss now?" Jack smiled. "Nah, I'm just the guy who remembers what it's like to be cold." And for the first time, he realized the storm that had changed his life hadn't ended. It had only just begun. It wasn't until weeks after the fire that Jack began to notice a pattern. Every time he thought he'd earned his place, Howard Sterling would pull the ground out from under him. Not out of cruelty, but to test how well Jack could stand back up. And then came the day Howard asked him to lunch. Not in the usual conference room or rooftop terrace, but at a quiet diner on 5th and Maple, where the booths squeaked, the coffee came in chipped ceramic mugs, and the waitress called everyone Arn. Howard sat across from him in a simple wool coat. No driver, no entourage. Just a man in his late 70s, stirring his cream into a $2.50 cup of coffee. "I used to eat here with my father," Howard said, watching the spoon swirl. "We'd split a cheeseburger and drink one milkshake with 2 straws. Back when that cost less than a gallon of gas." Jack smiled. "It's a good place." Howard nodded, then looked Jack in the eyes. "You probably think this all happened by chance. The umbrella, the street corner, the job, the promotion, but it didn't." Jack froze, setting down his fork. "What do you mean?" Howard took a long sip before answering. "I wasn't just wandering that night. I'd been watching you for 2 weeks." Jack blinked. "Watching me?" Howard nodded. "Not just you. Others too. I'd sit across the street, blending in, observing how the guards handled residents, deliveries, complaints. Most of them were polite. A few were lazy. But only one of them ran out into the rain without hesitation to help an old man cross the street." Jack leaned back, trying to process. "So, you were testing me?" Howard's voice softened. "I was looking for something I couldn't find in a resume. Kindness. Instinct. Someone who didn't wait for applause." Jack didn't speak. His mind reeled back to that night. The soaked shoes, the cold hands, the quiet "thank you." It had felt so simple. Now it felt like the hinge on which everything had turned. "But why me?" he finally asked. "You could have picked anyone." Howard's gaze dropped to the sugar packets scattered on the table. "Because I see myself in you." He reached into his coat and pulled out an old photograph. In it was a young man, 20-something, in a security guard uniform, standing proudly in front of a crumbling apartment building. Beside him, a woman with tired eyes and a gentle smile held his arm. "That's me," Howard said, tapping the photo. "And that's my mother." Jack leaned in. The resemblance was undeniable. "I grew up in Queens. My dad left when I was 10. Mom worked 3 jobs. I took night shifts to cover rent. I know what it's like to live with your back against the wall." He slid the photo across the table. "I didn't build an empire because I was brilliant. I built it because no one was coming to save me, and because a security guard once helped me, not with money, but with dignity." Jack raised his brows. "Wait, someone helped you?" Howard smiled. "Back when I was starting out, I slept in my car for 3 months while saving to buy my first duplex. One night, I fell asleep outside an old office building. The guard let me in to use the bathroom, gave me a cup of coffee, and told me I'd make it if I didn't quit." He paused. "That moment stayed with me. So when I saw you, I saw him, and I saw a younger version of me." The diner noise faded into the background. Jack stared at the photo again, heart swelling with something he couldn't name. Honor, gratitude, maybe a bit of disbelief. "I never thought I'd mean something to someone like you," Jack admitted. Howard's reply came gently. "Jack, the world doesn't change because of big gestures. It changes because someone chooses to be good when no one's looking. That's what you did. And that's why I trust you to help me build something that lasts." They left the diner without dessert, but Jack felt fuller than he had in years. That evening, Jack went home and hung the photograph on his bedroom wall. Next to it, he placed the umbrella. Torn, rusted, broken, but sacred now. A reminder that what feels small to us might be everything to someone else. And somewhere deep down, Jack realized he wasn't just living someone else's story anymore. He was becoming the man others would remember. 2 years later, Jack stood in front of a crowd of over 300 people. The new community center, funded entirely by the Sterling Foundation, was finally opening its doors. The center would offer job training, after-school programs, free meals, and emergency shelter for families in need. Jack had personally overseen every inch of its development. He stepped to the podium, adjusted the mic, and glanced down at the small card in his hand. Then he folded it and tucked it back into his pocket. He didn't need notes. This wasn't a speech. It was his story. "I used to think I was invisible," Jack began. "Just a night shift security guard trying to make ends meet. But one rainy night changed everything. Not because someone gave me a handout, but because someone saw me. Not for what I had, but for who I was." He paused, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Howard Sterling didn't just offer me a job. He gave me purpose. And today, I want this place to be that same kind of doorway. For every kid who's been told they're not enough. For every parent who's doing their best in silence. For anyone waiting to be seen." The crowd rose to their feet in applause. Somewhere in the back, beneath a wide-brimmed hat and quiet pride, sat Howard, his eyes glistening. And under Jack's arm, tucked into his portfolio bag, was a familiar old umbrella. Still broken, still sacred, still the beginning of everything. The most powerful moments in life don't come with fireworks or applause. Sometimes they arrive in the rain. Quietly, with a broken umbrella in your hand and a stranger's hand in yours. Jack Monroe didn't set out to change the world. He wasn't chasing recognition. He didn't know his small act of kindness, just helping an old man cross the street, would echo into something greater than himself. But that's the beauty of it. Kindness doesn't need a stage. It just needs a moment. Maybe right now, you're where Jack once was. Tired, unnoticed, unsure if any of it matters. But let this story remind you, someone is always watching. And the good you put out there, even when it feels small, ripples farther than you think. Because it's not about being perfect. It's about being present. So the next time you see someone struggling, stop. Offer your time, your heart, your umbrella. And who knows? Your simple act of kindness might be the very thing that changes someone's life. Or yours. If this story touched your heart, share it. Let someone out there know they matter. Drop a comment. What's one moment in your life when a small act made a big difference? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories that reveal the quiet heroes among us. Because sometimes the smallest gestures lead to the biggest miracles. And it all starts with you.